So you already practiced drawing the cylinders.
Mm-hmm.
This is like drawing a cylinder, except it's a little wider on the top and a little narrow on the bottom, right?
Yeah.
So basically, remember when you did your candle, that was straight up and down,
Mm-hmm.
and the bottom was a lot more curvy, right? So when you're doing this, the bottom is going to be slightly narrower than the top, but it still has to look like it's a bit more curvy than the top. Then you will capture this look pretty well. Also, because we're not focusing on a precise drawing here, but on the portraying how the metal looks when you're painting, how it all reflects different things. All I need you to do is capture the likeness of this cup. That is, the top opening is very narrow, the bottom is a bit more curvy, and the slope of the cup is more or less the same, right? Mm-hmm. So proportions, like the basic proportions. And for that, again, so you quickly just measure your proportions. How wide is the widest part at the top compared to the whole height? And I see that basically, if I say that this will be my entire height of the cup, right? The width of it compared to the height is doing something like this.
Mm-hmm.
See? So I kind of lightly suggested it here, but all I need to do is extend it just a bit to capture it a bit more precisely, right? About the same distance on both sides here. So now I need to capture the slope of the sides. Now, I haven't taught you that yet, but what you actually could do is you could simply line up your pencil with the very edge of the cup, same way, and transfer it over. That's your slope, right? Now you just kind of capture that. There we go. So that's about it. If we find the center here, center of symmetry, then we can easily duplicate it on the other side to make it look symmetrical, right? Here's your center. So if we have here equal here, right, then this should equal this. And then this slope should match, right? So, but for the fun of it, go ahead and line up your pencil with the side of the cup and transfer it here. See? And do you understand how to do that? Lining it up with the cup side?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, good. So we just need to straighten it out now. So what else is happening with this cup here? The ellipticals, right? This kind of gives us the basic place into which we're going to fit everything else. Now we're going to start carving out the ellipticals. So the top elliptical is slightly wider than the cup itself, right? It has that rim and it kind of becomes wider. So I will utilize the fact that if I drop this down straight like this to find the opening for the elliptical. Remember how I said the top elliptical looks very narrow, right? Then you can see how it already gives you this little shift. So again, I'm just using my already learned ideas of the foreshortening. This is being a little wider, this is a bit less, right? We're not doing the whole prism. we're just doing this so we could, based on the rules we already know, do the top elliptical in a more or less convincing way, and convincing according to the rules of perspective. So here's my rim is shaping up. Here it's a bit too curvy. And I like how right here I'm already getting a bit of a thickness, so I'll keep it. But you see the main thing, right? Mm-hmm. The side came up here. I dropped a straight line, and this is where my intersection was, right? I didn't come in as the cup was getting narrower, because then I would lose the width, and that proportion will end up being distorted. So, okay, now I'm going to add the rim here and a bit on this side, a bit wider. Within that rim, I'm looking at the cup. Where is my center? Compared to the center, I see that this is where the biggest, strongest highlight is. So I'm going to make sure that this stays bright. It's harder to erase the pencil from under the paint after you paint it. It's better to draw it in right away from the beginning. All right, and so if I just continue my sides, see, I get that little shift, right? This is my rim here. This is my rim here. And right here I get that little bit of a shift. That the body of the cup is narrower than its top. Let's go inside here. Here we'll have to adjust things just a tad. So if we have it this open here, we know that if we did the whole exactly the same elliptical here, it would definitely be wider, right? Guessing it would be something like this. You see what I mean, right? In your mind, you can project it. In our structural drawings, when we practice, we actually draw that. But you know that in your mind's already calculating it. All right, so it seems that if this was the case, my center kind of wants to be right here, right? For that slightly more open bottom, just like what you did with your candle, remember? But it's a lot narrower. How much narrower? Well, actually, if we come up here and take these lines already, it may work. So now I'm going to compare this width to the height, you see? And see if I'm getting those proportions right. Okay, to the height, I see it's like, and then I'm going to compare it to the top. I see, so when I compare this to the top, I see that there is a little extra space, but not a whole lot. When I compare it to the whole one, yeah, it's also very close. It comes out to like 1 2/3 or so, and that's how it looks here. So I'm happy with that. So therefore, this width is close enough. We don't need to focus on making it this narrow, actually. So, and it's probably because we captured that slope, we captured this height, proportion to this width. Be careful. And now we can complete this more or less convincingly. short of drawing the other one all the way. All right, so the basic shape drawing is completed. Now let's indicate where our table is. We don't need this actually because we're not seeing through, right? We don't need this. I will still leave the vertical center in just a little bit because I'm comparing every reflection that fits into here to the vertical center. All right. So the shadow is quite a bit going on the side. Kind of comes out of here and goes in this direction. The shadow doesn't go far behind the cup. It's not very high. I see that the table then is still kind of slightly lower than half of a cup. So about the center of the cup is right here, right? And the table below the center. That's where it intersects. That's what I'm paying attention to. Then there is the stripe in the fabric, and it's not very straight. So it obeys the rules of perspective, but because it's hanging at an angle, it's doing something like that. I'll give it a bit of a wobble. That's the stripe that goes behind the table. It's quite a bit darker, so I'm already giving it a darker value. I will keep this simple without any folds or anything, just so, because that's not the point of our exercise. But there is a stripe on the table that comes out from behind the cup, comes out in front of the cup, right? So where in front of the cup? It's more like here somewhere. It's very close to this edge. And where in back of the cup, it's also kind of right here where the shadow is. So it overlaps the shadow a bit. So basically the stripe on the fabric is doing something like this. Why am I connecting them through? So that they have a nice connection. If they shift too much, it won't look realistic, right? I'm just making sure I connect everything. All right, I'll leave this here. I don't want to do the edge of the table. It's not important. I'll continue this here. Again, I don't want to do too much detail there. Then there is the red stripe. The red stripe comes through the corner here, right? This is our cup. This is our vertical now. And right through this corner comes our red stripe. It has a bit of a wobble. Okay, I'll add that. And since they're parallel, and because of the rules of perspective, we want to make sure that it just opens up a bit, right? So it has a bit of this kind of angle. So you can connect it with a straight line, and you can, if you want, you can add a little bit of this wobble in here. Mm-hmm. And again, I'll leave it. I don't want to do the corner. And in here, it is sort of not super straight, not super wobbly either. We will do fabric separate on another lesson, so don't worry about it right now. We will just finish this edge of the stripe here. Again, we just need to make sure it's more or less perspective is obeyed. So it's doing something like this. And to remember this is our red stripe. I will give it already a little bit of a value. This is more or less white stripe. And then the rest is blue, and it kind of goes back there. So I'll give this a pass with a value. And so the fabric is done. We don't have to worry about it anymore. In fact, I'll give this a bit more width because they're pretty much, they look like they either the same size or very close to being the same width, red and white. So there we go. Now they're a bit closer. Now I'm going to indicate other parts that are strong reflections. For example, right here, there is a strong reflection. It looks almost like it's a rim, but it's not as wide as that, right? Because it's turning differently. It's turning away from us. This rim is turning toward us and under. This one comes up straight and starts turning. So the brightest reflection is basically right in here. Follows the geometry of the rim. The other one's already bright. I have another secondary reflection, slightly less bright. So again, I'm looking at the cup there, I'm comparing it to the center, and I see that it's actually very close to the center, but slightly off center. Here it is. And this reflection goes all the way down at a slight angle. What kind of angle is it? It's the kind of angle that mimics this, but it's not as strong. It's now closer to a vertical, but not totally vertical, right? So reflections follow with the curvatures and straightness of the cup. See, that one is just a tad wobbly. So I did it very, very straight, but I see that that one is not very straight. It has a tad of a wobble more near this lower portion. Why do you think that wobble is there?
Maybe the light hits differently there, or maybe it's slightly misshapen.
Or the fabric is not exactly straight.
Yeah.
Because what is this reflection, right?
Yeah.
This reflection, I think I made it a bit too curvy. Just need to give it very slight, very gentle wave here. Okay. It's reflecting the stripes in the fabric. It also reflects something in the out here. I think I can start moving things. So it's definitely not the windows, it's not the shutters, it's something in the room. This is definitely the, starts with the highlight and comes down, so that's from the lamp. So if this then starts on the rim and comes down, is it then this lamp? Mm-hmm. See? Like a further away lamp. So let's just, for the experiment's sake, make an experiment. And I will block this lamp. And you see if that reflection goes away.
A little bit, yeah.
Uh-huh. So I
yeah,
don't.
it does.
There we go. Let's go on. Mm-hmm. And then obviously this changes too, right? All right. So now we figured out what it is. So it wobbles then, probably because the surface of the cup is not extremely straight.
Yeah.
All right. So it's not the fabric, it's the light. So then we will take this one and do the same thing. So first we'll establish the angle at which it's coming down. More or less straight, thicker than the other, wider, right? And then let's add the little wobble to it. So now that you've got this, you see how it should be going. If it was perfectly straight, the wobble is here, so we'll add the wobble here as well. Okay, again, not too wobbly, but just enough. And then it actually comes right back to where it should be if it was straight. All right, that's fine. Added that. I'm making it slightly on the wider side because once you start painting, blending, you'll lose some of that width. I see that there is another reflection close by. So next to that, there is a darker one. Then there is something very light reflecting here, but not as strongly. So it's a narrower thing. And then there is darker space. And on the edge, the cup is lighter. And right just when it surpasses the table, where the table goes behind, it does something like this. So all of this is darker. This is lighter, right? This also happened to be darker. Remember, we were already thinking values ahead of time. Then this is slightly lighter. All of this is darker again. Then this is our strong reflection. Then all of this is basically darker, but within it, we see a red stripe. Mm-hmm. So the red stripe seems to be actually coming right on center. So again, I already have the center more or less straight, but the stripe kind of wobbles slightly, which is good. I'll give it a bit of a wobble here, and I'm making it slightly wider so we see it easily when we paint. And when it gets here, it actually comes right to this stripe. So it's this stripe reflecting over here. So that's where I'm like paying attention. How does it turn? Okay, it seems like turning strongly, then less strong, and then connects to that. So it kind of reflects on the side of the cup here. It's pretty wide here. And as it goes up, it's still wide. And as it goes toward this end, it's a lot thinner, right? You see that? So I will do that right now. Narrow it down a bit. So I remember that I planned ahead to make it narrower. And why is it narrower? The stripe is going away. Some of it is perspective. Some of it is just plain being able to fit everything in the surface of the cup. That is further away. It just looks smaller. Here, it's a lot closer, so it's more like a mirror. So it's reflecting a lot more and stronger. All right, then let's figure out on this side ahead of time which one is our blue stripe, right? So I'm going to come in here again, and if I put my hand, that's it. Mm-hmm. So this darkness then must be more like that stuff there, right? So it's the more like the blue in the back. That's why it's so much darker, because it's the darkness of this blue reflecting right in here. It's this lighter blue reflecting in here. That's why this is lighter, this is darker. Okay? Even though the light's coming from this direction, we have a very dark reflection here. All right, so I will lightly give this a pass as well. We more or less sorted out what's going on here. But this also reflects in here. So in a very careful way, I'm going to indicate that this is lighter, but it can't be as light as our reflection, obviously, right? So reflection stays the lightest. This is slightly darker, but as it goes up, this stripe reflects here and makes this a lot lighter. As it goes up, everything becomes a lot darker, right? This white stripe actually becomes darker, and in a way it kind of blends with the highlight, or almost, at least almost. So I will indicate that all of this is a lot darker here. And I'll keep this on the lighter side. Then I want to put in one of my darkest spots right here. And then it kind of stops, right? It never goes past where the table ends and the background begins. It never goes past that spot. The background here being so much darker, the light ends up, the side of the cup ends up being lighter, and then it becomes darker again. So I want to make sure I don't accidentally paint over this. So I'm gonna save myself a light spot. I'm going to indicate that there is a thickness of a darker area here. And again, things are starting to reflect in a kind of like average way. It kind of averages out. We have more red and white stripes continuing, but when they're reflecting in here, it sort of ends up being almost like averaged out, almost like orangey peachy kind of color, right? This is the only stripe that we see a lot more distinctly. This overall becomes lighter, and the other area around here becomes darker. This is probably the darkness of the room. And this is your fabric that has red and white stripes. Now it's too hard to tell stripes from one another, but we do definitely can tell that this is definitely darker, and this is similar to this value. And as it gets to here, it becomes lighter, considerably lighter. All right, so last thing we have is what's going on inside. This is the brightest, this is your medium value, and it gets the darkest right around here. It gets darkest, and absolute darkest right on the end here, with a little reflection over in this spot. So that's all lightly indicated. That's how you plan out how you're gonna do metal ahead of time, right? Mm-hmm. All right. Just want to make sure this is nice and clean, bright reflection. All right, so now we can start painting. Much like we did with glass, let's start with the background, right? And if you still have some of your paint left from the glass painting, you can just totally utilize this. All right, I'm going to go ahead and give it a warm pass first. This is my Indian yellow and Indian red. Making it a little more golden and a little lighter here with a little more Indian yellow. Very, very mild wash. So I'm already separating slightly darker, slightly lighter, right? the background recedes, we'll give it a bit more darkness. It's a different angle toward the light. See how I just picked up a little bit of paint, right? With a just clean brush. And it's already starting to work for me because it's showing the stripes. All right, while I'm at it, I'm gonna give a little, I have this nice Indian yellow here, and I see that that reflection is very light and very golden. I'll indicate it right now. I'll go wider than the reflection. All these edges will disappear once we start painting. I'm gonna give the same one over here. Try not to touch the background so it doesn't bleed. And I'll add a little bit of that goldenish hue right in here already. I want that golden to always pop through. You see how, even though it's technically like silver, stainless steel, I guess, it has a more golden glow where there is a lot of light. All right, so that's my underpaint. Now we can go back to that stripe. You already painted that stripe before, so same thing. Winsor, a little bit of your rose to give it a little more ultramarine blue kind of hue. It's pretty dry, so what I'll do is I will first go over everything. The stripe on the back and the stripe that's on the little table, right on the surface, flat surface. And why do you think that is? Why am I making this decision?
It makes it easier to make the shading.
Right. When I need to make it darker, right? I go over here, but not over here.
Mm-hmm.
Good. So let that dry. And I touch the blue, it's on my brush. I know that it's going to be reflecting in the cup, so right now might as well be a good time to go ahead and give it, for example, at least the very dark reflection right here. Let's go ahead and fill this in and not blend it with anything just yet. Don't worry about blending. The sharper you make your reflections appear, the more shiny it will look. We can always come back and add a bit of a blending later. So I'm trying real hard not to make it bleed too much in between those two. Although it could, because I could sharpen it later. Okay, I will also go ahead and give this a bit of a same value, same path. And see how I've intruded into a little bit of my reflection, so I don't totally lose it. I'm gonna grab a little bit of my warmer mixture, Indian yellow and Indian red. I'm gonna come in here and make sure my paint stays pushed apart. Just filling in the gaps where it's gotten lighter. All right, that's close enough. There's a little nice bleeding. I'll leave it sort of, I like it, kind of looks nice. All right, so what can I do now? I'll kind of switch to the smaller brush. Let's put in, before we go too far, let's put in that red stripe right in the front with a just basic red. Go ahead and mix yourself a basic red, your rose and a little bit of Indian because it looks a little on the warmer side, at least in the light, right? It doesn't look super, not toward the raspberry, it looks more toward the tomato red. Okay, and I'm going over the shadow, where the shadow will be cast by the cup, and I'm going over the light as well. I'm gonna leave it like that here. So I have this red mixture. I'm gonna save it for my reflections. While everything is drying in there, all the stuff is going on, I'm going to go ahead and use my blue that I used for the stripe here. I'm gonna use it over here on some of this because I believe that those are also caused by that blue. Just the darkest part here. Then I see where the dark edge on the rim is. It's here, it's on the top. And underneath here, it's quite a bit darker. It's part of it is the shadow from the rim. So the rim has thickness, so it's casting a bit of a shadow. The darkness keeps coming over. It gets almost completely interrupted, but right here it still is darker underneath by that reflection. And then it still continues to be darker here. And this red reflection, it doesn't interrupt it too much. It all gets darker in there. And then the brightest yellow reflection, I'll call it the brightest yellow reflection, is a very thin interruption. And then it continues like this on the very edge here, right? And then I will add just more paint in here. And I will add this in here as well. Now while here it's a little more distinct, as it gets toward this bottom, it becomes more vague. So I will do that. I will add a little more water here and I will create that vagueness. But I'll keep it a bit more on the sharp side up here right now. Where else do I have very dark areas? But inside, right? So I'm gonna grab some of my Winsor, a little bit of my Indian red to it, and I'm gonna create a bit of a gray, not so blue of a color. And I will add it in the darkest portions inside here. I doubt that in here it's any of the blue fabric reflecting. It's not the blue stripe. And if it is not the blue stripe, then I shouldn't be using it. I shouldn't be using that strong blue. So graying it down a bit will do the trick. So I was indicating before that this is my area where it starts to become a shadow. I see my line drawing in there. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'll soften it up as a softer transition. And I'll grab some of my previously mixed warmer color and add it right in here, right with my gray. So this is Indian yellow and what were you? Yeah, Indian red. And let them blend. It's slightly warmer reflecting light in there, but it's not as strong, not as bright. All right, let's indicate that shadow on the table. The shadow on the table is slightly different hue than the color of the blue stripe, right? It's looking similar, it's kind of bluish gray, but it's a different kind of blue. And when I look at it, I'm thinking, if I'm pushing this a little more toward rosy ultramarine, then this should stay more on the cooler blue, which in this context will feel more toward the greenish, right? So a little bit more Winsor to my already gray mixture that I just used should do the trick, should separate them. See, it does look different. Okay, so I'm going over the red, I'm going over the fabric, our warmer color, and I'm bringing it here, right under the cup, right in the corner. Just all one pass first. So I'm doing all the very first layers, right? All the first guesses for what is lighter, darker, and slightly different in hue. All right, so since that is working out, I'm going to go ahead and darken that value of the stripe. I'll keep this on the lighter side. See how much lighter it is than the background, right? So I'll give this another pass to make this darker. And pick it up here on the other side. Separating not badly now, right? Once it dries up, we'll see how it looks then. So, all right. How about we work on this big place now? So here we have a lot of reflections that are some are sharp and some are not so sharp, right? We have this reflection coming through that kind of cuts right through all of those very fuzzy reflections, right? So we want to keep it on the sharper side. So here's the strategy, right? How you strategize. You need to think ahead how you're going to achieve the effect. It would be nice to do this area wet and wet. We have this coming through, kind of sharper. So wet and wet to do successfully will be very difficult. So let's do it two halves, since it's coming from one end to another. We'll do this first, wet and wet, and then duplicate the process here, wet and wet, adjusting the colors and the values, right? Obviously here we already indicated the darker areas. We don't have nearly as dark on this side. So, okay, so if I come in here with my general grayish medium color, then I will add slightly lighter splashes with a little peachiness here, and it will not be so strong as my colors up front, right? And if I then add a little more darkness here and whatever rosiness, yellowishness, it will all theoretically will blend together nicely, right? If I then come here with a medium gray, keeping my reflections untouched, keeping this reflection untouched, then I can add a stronger red for the stripe. And again, there's like still a little bit of this table reflecting in here, and then it's becoming darker toward here. So we can start adjusting it wet and wet, but do it one at a time, right? Since I'm right-handed, I'll start here. So if anything, I won't smudge this. Then once this is drying, I'll work on this side, right? Because if I work here and then on that, I have a chance of smudging. Just more of a strategic thinking. What kind of gray should it be? Your best guess.
Maybe a little on the greener side.
A little on the green. Well, it does. Yeah, it does look. It does look kind of darker gray, but not as ultramarine as that. And ultramarine has a little that purpley hue, right? And not as kind of greenish as that. But on this side, it does start to look a bit greenish because I think that metal has a little bit of its own yellowishness to it. That's why the lamp reflects in such a strong yellow light, right? So, okay, so I'll keep it a bit more on the bluer side with a little bit of Indian red in it. And water, lots of water. I also know that this reflection on the rim is visible, so I want to be careful not to ruin that. Here's my other reflection. I want that to be nice and visible. Bring this nicely over here. Now this is the area where it's gonna start getting lighter, right? In that red stripe. So I'll kind of save a little bit of space here, but not too much. But we can't have it as light as the table. So now that I will grab the colors I used for the table, if I add them while this is all still wet, like this, it should work. And now I'm going to add my stronger red. And my plan is to be okay with the bluish gray bleeding into here and a bit of other colors bleeding into here. And as it goes back up, I'm picking up more of my darker color because it is darker here. And letting this become darker. Make sure this looks linear. And make sure this looks more linear. Now it's very wet. And see, my darker underpaint keeps creating that more stripy effect, right? Even though this is kind of blotchy. Still helps me keep that stripy effect of something stripy reflecting in there. All right, for now I better let it dry. Otherwise I'll overdo the wetness. I can come back and go over it a bit again. But look how, because I started with that grayish, medium gray, right? And I had that darker underpaint. It is kind of looking darker in value than my future reflection, quite a bit, right? The only thing I'm seeing is that right here, the stripe bled so much, I better lighten this up. So this just needs to look goldener. There we go, it's not too bad. Okay, this is going to be our white stripe of the table reflecting in there, but it is quite a bit darker. Okay, let's try the same thing on the other side. So this one starts right here. what I'll do is right here I will go over the red stripe. So it will help to make that red stripe disappear into the darkness of that reflection. But right here I will keep it from blending completely. So again, it's like strategic thinking. Where do you need very, very vague kind of effect, and where you need a stronger effect. Leaving it here lighter for that table, reflecting in the cup. The white stripe on the table, just like that. So it's the brightest at the table. It's less bright but warmer over here. Same thing happens on the other side of the red. And now I'm gonna grab my red and I'm gonna continue. Like that. While it's still wet, I'm gonna get a little more of my golden effect right in here. And a little bit more of it on this side here. But then it all disappears and becomes darker, right? So while I was doing that, see my red is kind of becoming too vague. I will bring a bit more in, just like that. While this is drying, and I see that the red actually gets a bit darker here, I will go ahead and add that slightly darker look on that part of the stripe. All right, again, don't want to overdo it, let it dry. And what can we do now? While this is all drying, let's work on this side now, right? This is a stronger, warmer reflection. The white of the back is reflecting, so, but it's not quite so bright. To make it stand out better and not interfere and not compete with our reflection, and this is still fairly light as well. This value and this value are very similar. I'm going to go and do the same effect as I did with the others. Go right under the rim. I'm seeing that right here it's very, it's quite a bit darker than the background. And I'll go over everything right here. I will make sure that this stays lighter. I'll bring this all the way down. And I will let this stay a bit lighter. And now I will add my warmth to this. This reflection is still visible, so that's good. I'll keep that. It's still visible as warm. And right here, the lightest wash, just like that. So it stays the brightest there, at least for now. Maybe it's still too light, but for now we'll keep that. The same thing is happening on the other side, right on this edge here. It's the warmth of the background here, warm, lighter value is reflecting. And it's more contrasting with the background. If the background is lighter, the cup in that area is darker. if the background is darker, then the cup has to be lighter next to it. And now I want to keep everything still soft and blending. So I'm softening this up just with water. Just let the water do the work. One other thing, we can do this darker again, because of all the places, this here is dark and this is the darkest. And what is this? What is causing this to be so dark?
Because the direct light is not on it, maybe?
First it's in the shadow, right?
Yeah.
And then there is a shadow on the table, and that's causing this to be the absolute darkest of all on the whole cup. While I have it on my brush, I'll go ahead and do this, a little bit of a darker edge where the cup rolls under, right? Because it's a bit rounded here. Okay. Now I can soften up this, because it needs to be a nice, soft transition. Okay, that's good enough for now. Where else do I see slight darkening? Right down here. What happens to this reflection? Right down here, it almost blends with the reflection on the table. So I will go ahead and soften it up right now. Because I didn't paint over it initially, right? You can still somewhat see it, but now it's a lot more blended and soft. But right here, we're seeing that reflection pretty good. It's just not as strong as that one. So let me grab a little bit of, so what kind of color should I grab to make that reflection?
At least from where I'm sitting, it looks bluish.
Mm-hmm. So I'll grab a little bit of my Winsor without any other colors. Remember, on such a small area, right? It will serve us well. I'm just softening up these hard lines. Because I don't have a lot of layers of paint in there, I can afford to have this a bit darker, and it is not as bright as that. And now my edges are softening up. Now I need to soften up this edge. just when the paint was spreading, it got a lot of that blue pushed toward this edge, right? And now we can just push it back and spread it all over the place. Okay. Now soften this up a bit. Soften this up, transitions. I see that right here that does become a bit darker, a bit more noticeable. So I'll add that in here right now. And now I'm going back to my Winsor and adding just a touch of Winsor, so it looks a bit more bluish. And right here, it's where it's less distinct. All right, so let all of this work dry. Let's go back inside here. Sort it all out. Darkest, medium dark, right here becomes warmer, and a little bit again darker, and actually it's darker on the rim like I already indicated, right? That's interesting. So I'm gonna go get more of my Indian yellow and a tad of that Indian red. So it's like a orangier hue, but not a super bright orange like fruit, right? I'm going to give this a pass because I see that there is a warmer reflection, and it's probably this fabric. That's why it's, even though it's on the side of the shadow here, it's reflecting warmer. And I don't want to forget about this one. So that's our cooler reflection. I'll bring it all the way over here. So I see how it becomes really slightly darker and orangey here. And my brightest reflection is right here. And the interesting thing is there is a little bit more golden here, but then it becomes more gray. So I'll continue with my lighter Winsor shade for now to just separate them and not let them look too similar. I will pick up some of my gray that I worked with right here. I'll punch this rim up, give it another pass. That one goes all the way to this reflection, this shiny spot, goes past it and kind of stops right here. And then on the other side, we have this inside the cup is what's making it now separate from the front. And all of this is happening right behind this highlight. And right here, it's when it's the darkest. See how my underpaint is now serving me well, right? So now I'm gonna get a little bit of both. So a little bit of my warmer Indian red and yellow, and a little bit of that gray. And I'll keep bringing them up here with more and more water added, and let them start getting lightened up. And connect everything. This brightness shouldn't compete with highlight right here and this highlight. Mm-hmm. So it can still go down a notch in value, but this is the first pass to establish this gradation. What else can I do? I can sharpen it, this edge here. Now separate. Don't like that. I need it more precise. Okay, that's a bit better. All right, got that separated. Within that reflection, this here is the brightest, and then the cone becomes a little bluer. And I think it's opposite of this reflection. It's the other light that has a cooler light. That's good. So keep an eye on that. This should be a bit darker, but not as dark as the rim. So if I go over the rim a bit, I won't lose anything. This connects to that a little outline of the back of the rim. This connects to here, and now I can spread it more over. And keep adding my darker value. And making my gradations more precise, right? So there, now this is slightly darker than the brightest reflection. Mm-hmm. It's becoming slightly darker toward the corner, the rim still stands out, and it's becoming rather darker, a bit lighter and warmer, and darker again. All right, that's kind of what I was shooting for. If you look at this inside the cup, you will see that there's a bit of an angle of how this is reflecting. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's why I kept it more or less at this angle, because I'm seeing that how things are reflecting inside the cup. It's obviously part of the cup itself, the opposite side, and whatever it's picking up from the outside, right? That affects how those go. All right, so what can we do now? We can soften up this here. How did this get here? Soften up this line, right? It's where the paint gets pushed right to the edge. And while it's kind of wetted here, I'm going to go and add a bit more definition, a bit more of my bluer, darker color. But I don't want it to intrude into my reflection, so I'll just be sure I make it dry. Now we can soften up this. And I'll go and get my cadmium in here. I so far haven't used cadmium in this painting at all. Cadmium yellow. And because it's a different yellow, it will, and it's not used anywhere else, it will further separate that reflection from all of our other warm hues. So right now, this reflection doesn't stand out enough, right? That means that all of this and all of this can stand to go a little darker. And on this side it's a little bit better, but I'll let it dry. Actually, right here, this another line is forming, right? I need to pick up, soften it up. But, okay, since I'm spreading it sort of, okay, I'll go ahead and add my darker value in here. All right, that's starting to get darker, that's good. So I can punch up the darkness a bit more right on the edge while everything's very wet with a very thick, lots of pigment and very little water on here. And let's do the same thing. I don't want to touch this. It seems to be good. I will just wet this area here. And I won't even come to the edge of this reflection. Just wetting that. And now I'm going to pick up slightly darker color, my darker value, and only darken this. And let it spread. A lot darker, a lot more paint here, pigment, and a lot less water on the brush. Okay, so it's becoming more defined now, right? Good, it's all those values. And since this has gotten a lot darker, that means that this has to become a lot darker as well. Adding a little light gray pass down here to help it feel like it's turning under. The cup's turning under. And therefore it gets darkened toward the edge. Okay, now I'm going to put in a few final definitions. For example, right here, not as dark as that, but it can take a bit of a darker hue, not right to the edge, because now the edge is turning, so the edge is a little lighter here, but right here, you know which edge I mean, right? This edge here, not right to that edge, but right in here. I can now add a little bit of a definition here. Remember how we said one is slightly lighter than the other? That one is slightly darker, and I'll give it a bit more. Make sure it looks a bit more purpley because it's that fabric, right? Here it's where it's becoming lighter and more vague. Here it's that warmer reflection again, but it's not super light. Right here, I'm looking at it and I'm seeing that right here, you can still use a few just slightly darker areas, just a little bit. That's too much. Right here, I just need to soften up this edge. All right. I'm looking at this red stripe here. I see that right here I can make it a bit stronger because it's closer to this red, a bit stronger here, and then the rest can go away into the vagueness. This shouldn't stick out quite so strongly. Dragging some of the paint I already have around. See, quite a bit of paint here. So if I just introduce some of it to this area, it won't hurt. it will not hurt. And I will add some of my warmer hue right here, right? All right, this is warmer, cooler, right? Reflecting something warmer, probably this fabric in the distance, slightly cooler, then cool reflection, darker, then becomes a little warmer, then it's red, then it's again slightly warmer and then cooler, this fabric and whatever else becomes very bright, nearly golden, and then it's darker, lighter, a lot darker, a lot lighter, and a little bit of a darker edge. All right, so the only thing now we can improve is finish this rim, right? This rim, it's kind of a bit warm here, and then it starts becoming cooler. All I needed to do to be is very vague indication that it's slightly lighter and slightly cooler than the rest of the area. And just a little bit more of a separation here, but not a whole lot. Like that. And the edge where it's rolling away from us. All right, so the only other thing you can do now is work a little bit on the background, a little bit additional things on the background, and what can this be, right? What can we do with the background additionally? Push this a little bit further back by giving it a lighter sort of pass, so it doesn't look the same as everything that's close to us, like this. Now this is becoming closer, so that's fine. This is also helps to get the shadow a little bit darker, to help the shadow look like red in the shadow, so it's not just a blue pass. I'm going to give it a bit of a purple right here on the edge only. See? Mm-hmm. The rest will stay the same. And where is the shadow the darkest? But the closest to the cup, right? Yeah. Right here, it starts to be darker. Right here, it becomes a little lighter. And right here, it becomes a bit darker again. It does overlap that blue. So this blue is also in the shadow, but it's not super dark. It's not a lot of difference. And the last thing I'll do is give the background just a slight warmer but slightly cooler pass. What hue is this, for example?
This?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a purplish.
Yeah. So I'm separating the background once again, right? Separating it a bit more from my foreground, which is important. And that's a tiny amount of my rose, And the same blue I already had for painting this entire thing. I am leaving this lighter, and I'm only darkening this on this side and back here. And why am I doing this? Why here and not so much here? What do you think?
Yeah.
Hmm? What do you think?
It makes the highlight stand out more.
Right. If this here is a highlight and the fabric in the back is darker, it will help highlight stand out, right?
Yeah.
If this is a dark shadow, then the fabric in the back should be lighter, right?
Mm-hmm.
At least right closest to it. Here we already have reflections, but the fabric still stays lighter because there's like very tiny thin reflection right on the edge.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this, constant comparison. What is lighter? Something next to it must be darker. That's how we see everything. Okay. All right, so basically you got the idea now. I can only do a little cleanup on the edges, straighten out the edges that are a bit raggedy, make sure my reflections are nice and shiny. Yeah, there's some of this part can be a little darker, so the reflection is more standing out. Some of this could be just a bit darker, so this reflection stands out more. So the rest is like a little cosmetic details. You don't need to really see that. You understand now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, get started.